students. This is Haya Nawar. I am your teaching assistant for the supply chain management course for this semester. I will upload two chapters or two sections. The first section will include chapter 1 and the second section will include chapter 2. My colleague Dr. Rana will upload chapter 4 and chapter 5. This section will include two types of questions: multiple choice questions and true or false questions. We will answer each question together and we will discuss each question together during the section. And please, if you still have any inquiries or you still have any questions you need to ask after the section, you still can contact me. My contact is with BIS major and marketing major group representatives, so you can ask anything. So let's start by the MCQ, or multiple choice questions. The first question is: supply decisions affect the income statement, the balance sheet, the income statement and the balance sheet, neither the income statement nor the balance sheet, none of the financial matrices. So of course the answer is C. As we know, the criteria for supply decisions have been identified in three categories. Operational, the first one is the operational decisions, the second one is the strategic decisions, and the third one is the additional decisions. For the third one, the third category, it includes the balance sheet, income statement considerations, all dimensions of risk, environmental and social considerations. So of course the answer is C. The second question: on average, the dollars spent with suppliers as a percent of revenues is about equal in service organizations and manufacturing, greater in manufacturing than in service organizations, greater in service organizations than in manufacturing, depends on the type of manufacturing process, depends on the type of service. Of course, here the answer is B, greater in manufacturing than in service organizations. And as we know, dollars spent with suppliers as a percentage of total revenues is a good indicator of supply's financial impact. The third question: the role of supply management is best captured by the following question. A, how can supply help suppliers decrease costs? B, how can supply and suppliers help decrease costs? C, how can supply and suppliers help decrease costs and increase revenues? D, how can supply help decrease costs and increase revenues? E, how can supply help decrease costs? Here the answer is C. And as we know, supply contribution should not be perceived as only focused on costs. Okay, it should only focus on increasing revenues. So the answer is C. Okay, question number 4. To contribute to organizational strategy, the supply department should: A, meet expectations of internal customers, B, execute current tasks as designed, C, routinize and automate transactions, D, seek opportunities to provide competitive advantage, and E, streamline the process. Of course, here the answer is D, seek opportunities to provide competitive advantage. And as we know, the mission, vision, and strategy of the organization are the key drivers for how the supply function will be managed. Question number 5. The impact of supply management actions on the inventory asset base and the balance sheet is measured by the A. Return on investment, B. Return on inventory, C. Inventory turnover, D. Profit leverage effect, and E. Return on assets. The answer is E. Return on assets effect. Now, as for question number 6, performance of the supply management function can be viewed in two contexts. A. Operational and strategic, B. Operational and transactional, C. Operational and trouble avoidance, D. Strategic and opportunistic, E. Strategic and future oriented. And of course the answer is A. Operational and strategic. And as we know, the supply contribution, here he's asking about the performance of the supply management, so we can know this through the supply contribution. And of course we know that the supply contribution can be viewed or detected or known through two ways, with whether it's operational or strategic. The operational supply contribution is mainly based on trouble prevention, whereas strategic supply contribution is based on opportunity maximization. Okay, question number 7. The profit leverage effect of supply savings means that A reduction in purchase spend increases profit more than an equal sales increase. B, effective price negotiations with the supplier would lower the supplier's profit. C, the buyer gains leverage over suppliers when purchases are standardized. D, efficient supply management processes will increase profits. E, a reduction in money tied up in inventory improves profits. Of course, here the answer is A. What is meant by profit leverage effect of supply? It basically means a reduction in purchase spend increases profit more than an equal sales increase. Okay, question number 8. As supply chains have become more global, the risk of supply disruptions has A. increased because other countries lack the business ethics of the US, B. increased because financial and exchange rate fluctuations, C. stayed the same because the issues are similar wherever suppliers are located, D. decreased because risk is spread among suppliers all over the world, E. decreased because there are global standards for labor and safety. So here the answer of course will be B. increased because of financial and exchange rate fluctuations. As we know that commodity and financial markets establish prices that may go up and down beyond the control of the individual purchasers, and this of course causes fluctuations, exchange rate fluctuations, and higher risk for the supply. Question number 9. Supply management may indirectly contribute to the organization's competitive advantage by A. Reducing assets tied up in inventory. B. Reducing annual spend. C. Reducing prices paid to suppliers. D. Increasing sales to customers. E. Improving process efficiency. And here the answer is, of course, E. A system's approach to managing the flow of information, materials, and services from tiers of suppliers through the buying organization to tiers of customers is, of course, this is D. This is the definition of supply chain management. You should know it. Okay, now we have finished the MCQ questions. The MCQ or the multiple choice questions, and now let's see the true or false questions. Question number 1. Supply is of great consequence in most manufacturing organizations since the costs of purchased materials and services greatly exceed labor and other costs. Here, of course, the statement is true. Question number 2. Public institutions are service providers with many regulatory requirements regarding acquisition policies and procedures. Again, here the statement is true. Question number 3. Sustainability initiatives include the effective and efficient capture and disposal of upstream products from suppliers and an increase in the impact of the organization's supply chains on the natural environment. Okay, this statement would have been true only if he mentioned that it's the efficient capture and disposal of downstream, not upstream products. So the statement is false. Question number 4. There is one best way for all organizations to organize and manage the supply function, conduct activities, and effectively integrate suppliers. Again, this statement is false, and if we need to correct it, we'll say that there is no one best way for all organizations to organize and manage the supply function, etc. Okay, question number 5. One of the most important steps in achieving the potential of the supply function is hiring someone from outside the company's industry into the top supply position. Of course, this statement is false. The managers or the CEO should seek hiring chief supply officer from inside the company for the top positions, for the top supply positions. Question number 6. Supply management has evolved from a process-oriented strategic function to a transaction-based tactical function. This statement is, of course, it's false. And actually it's the vice versa. Supply management has evolved from transaction-based to process-oriented function. Question number 7. Reductions in inventory investment primarily come from getting users to reduce their demand for inventoried items. So this statement is false, and if we have to correct it, we will say that reductions in inventory investment primarily come from getting suppliers to take over inventory responsibility and ownership. And of course, we can reduce or cause reductions in inventory investments also by lowering purchase price. Okay, so it's not by getting users to reduce their demand for inventoried items. Question number 8. Supply makes a significant contribution to organizational risk management, since many supply decisions have downside risks that might impact the organization's strategy. This statement is true. Statement number 9. The true test of supply's contribution is when the chief executive officer and the management team recognize that supply and suppliers are critical to organizational success and competitive advantage. Of course, this statement is true as well. The last statement, terms such as purchasing, procurement, supply chain, and logistics have standard definitions that are widely used across sectors and industries. This statement is false. Why is it false? Because the use of these concepts, purchasing, procurement, supply, etc., depends on three factors or three things, okay? The first one is the stage of development of the supply function in the firm. The second factor is the industry in which the firm operates. The third factor is the competitive position in which the firm, the competitive position of the firm, okay? So that's why this statement is false. So now we have finished our revision for chapter 1 with MCQ and true or false questions. I hope you guys it was beneficial for you. Still, if you have any questions, you can contact me anytime. Thank you so much. Students, this is section 2, and today we will answer some questions on chapter 3. As I mentioned before, my dear colleague Dr. Rana will upload section 3 and section 4, and they will include chapter 4 and chapter 5. So we will cover 4 chapters, 1, 3, 4 and 5, and of course chapter 2 is cancelled. So this section will include multiple choice questions and true or false questions as we said in chapter 3. So let's see the questions. The first question is, in manufacturing companies, A. Supply and operations coordination is not essential to operational excellence. B. Supply and operations coordination is essential to operational excellence. C. Most purchases are for resale. D. Purchases typically represent a small percentage of total expenditures. E. Production purchasing is outsourced and non-production purchasing is done in-house. Of course, here the answer is B. Supply and operations coordination is essential to operational excellence in manufacturing companies, because as we know, in manufacturing companies especially, the total task of integrated logistics, meeting in the customers' demands on the one side and using the supply networks on the other, while managing material and information flow, equipment, people, and space efficiently. This is an incredible challenge. This represents an incredible challenge. So there has to be coordination between supply and operations. Question number 2. Specialization within the supply function. A. Is necessary because most tasks are transactional. B. Has no impact on materials or services total cost of ownership. C. Increases operating costs beyond the benefits of specialization. D. allows staff to develop expertise in particular areas. E is seldom required now that so many tasks are automated. Of course, here the answer is D. Specialization within the supply function allows staff to develop expertise in particular areas. And what else does specialization do? As we know, specialization also allows professionals to have clearly defined responsibilities. So of course this will in return help them gain or develop expertise in specific areas, specific or particular areas. So question number 3, the organizational structure, whether it's centralized, decentralized, or hybrid, of the supply chain. A, influences supply processes, internal cross-functional relationships, and the procedures and systems employed. B, influences the procedures and systems employed but not supply processes or internal cross-functional relationships. C, influences internal cross-functional relationships and the procedures and systems employed but not supply processes. D, influences supply processes but not internal cross-functional relationships or the procedures and systems employed. And E, has little influence on supply processes, internal cross-functional relationships, or the procedures and systems employed. Of course, here the answer is A, because as we know, the organizational structure influences all of the following factors: the supply processes, the internal cross-functional relationships, and the procedures and systems employed. So the answer is A. Question number 4, a purchasing consortium is A A speeds up the purchasing processes but does not usually results in price concessions from suppliers. B, results in price concessions from suppliers but usually do not speed up the purchasing process. C, consists of 2 or more independent organizations that combine requirements for materials, services, and capital goods to gain better pricing services and technology. D, consists of 2 or more divisions of the same organization that combine requirements for materials, services, and capital goods to gain better pricing services and technology. E is a form of collaborative purchasing used only by the public sector to deliver a wider range of services at a lower total cost. Of course, here the answer is C. It consists of 2 or more independent organizations. So take care, it's not D, it's not divisions from the same organization, but rather it's 2 or more independent organizations. Okay. As for question number 5, the objectives of supply are to obtain A, the right material at the right quality, quantity, price, and cost at the right place from the right source with the right service. B, the right quality, materials in the right quantity and the right time and place from the right source at the right service level and at the right price. C, the right material at the right place, time, price, cost, and terms and conditions. D, the right material or service at the right quality, quantity, place, time, and from the right source and the right service. E, the right quality and quantity at the right price and cost delivered to the right place and at the right time from the right source. Here the answer is B, and take care because this question is somehow tricky with words. So the objective of supply are to obtain the right quality material in the right quantity at the right time and place from the right source at the right service level and at the right price. Now question number 6. To achieve time, quality or cost reduction targets, organizations may A. Give internal users ownership of tasks and problems. B. Promote diversity in the workplace. C. Expand the size of the supply base. D. Commit resources to cross-functional team development. E. Cross-train employees in case of downsizing. And here the answer is D. And this can be done by operating concurrently rather than sequentially. So having cross-functional teams will help us work or operate concurrently. And this, of course, will achieve time, quality, and cost reduction targets. Question number 7. Close to 70% of the value of any given requirement is established during A. Supplier evaluation and selection. B. Price negotiation. C. Identification of potential suppliers. D. Need recognition and description. And E. Delivery and inventory management. And here the answer is the answer is D. And as we know, need recognition and description is the first step in the supply in the purchasing process. Okay. Question number 8. Which factors have a major influence on supplies level in the organization? The geographical location of the supply base, the nature of the products or services acquired, the extent to which supply and suppliers can provide competitive advantage, the ratio of purchased material and services cost to total costs or total income, and E. the credentials of the existing supply personnel. Here the answer is E, which is B, C, and D together. So the factors that have a major influence on supplies level in the organization are the nature of the products or service acquired, the extent to which supply and suppliers can provide competitive advantage, and the ratio of purchased material and services costs to total costs or total income. Question number 9. To add the greatest value to the design of new product and services, the following functions should work together during the design stage. A. The primary user, design, engineering, supply, and all other relevant functional areas such as accounting, finance, marketing. B. The primary user, design, engineering, supply, and accounting. C. The primary user, design, engineering, and supply. D. The primary user and supply. E. The primary user and specifier. Of course, here the answer is A. When we are working on a product design, a new product or service design, we will need to work together as a team from different functions and divisions. So we will have to work with the engineering function or the designer from engineering background, the primary user, the supply, and all other relevant functional areas in the organization such as accounting, finance, marketing, operations, etc. So question number 10. Supply's contribution to the organization's competitive position depends on its ability to A. Reduce costs. B. Enhance revenues. C. Manage assets. D. A and C. E. A, B, and C. So here the answer is E, it's A, B, and C. So supply's contribution to the organization's competitive position depends on its ability to reduce costs, enhance revenues, and manage assets. Now let's go to true or false questions. Question number 1. The supply process and structure for managing indirect spend is typically the same as the process and structure for managing direct spend. This one, of course, is false. As we know, direct spend includes any goods that go into the end product or service. However, indirect spend includes purchases such as professional services, utilities, travel, etc. So we can say that the locus of control over direct spends is in a highly centralized supply group, while in indirect spends it's often outside the loop of a structural sourcing process. And supply responsibility is often left in hands of the internal user. So of course there is a difference between direct and indirect spend in the process and structure. Okay, question number 2. Some of the disadvantages of centralization are narrow specialization and job boredom, lack of job flexibility, and a tendency to minimize legitimate differences in requirements. Of course, this statement is true. Okay, question number 3. Supply's objective to provide an uninterrupted flow of materials, supplies, and services to operate the organization is perfectly aligned with the objective to keep inventory, investment, and loss at a minimum. Here, the statement is false. Why is it false? Because it's not perfectly aligned. They are not perfectly, the two objectives are not perfectly aligned together, because inventory assets require use of capital that cannot be invested elsewhere, and that cost of carrying inventory may be 20 to 50% of its value per year. So that's why this statement can be considered false. Okay, question number 4. Even if products, services, and processes are standardized, it will probably not lower total cost of ownership. Again, this statement is false, because as we know, standardization refers to the process of agreeing on a common specification or process. So supply should standardize whenever and wherever possible. For example, if we are talking about standardizing the materials, for example, so standardization here leads to lower risk in the marketplace and lower prices through volume purchase agreements and lower inventory and tracking costs. And if we're talking about standardization for services, so here standardization leads to supply-based reduction, lower operating costs, more consistent service levels, and lower prices. So of course standardization, this statement is false about standardization, okay, because it will lower total cost of ownership. Statement number 5. Hybrid supply structures typically capture the benefits of both centralized and decentralized organizational structures. This statement is true. Okay, for statement number 6. reducing prices paid for goods and services is the best way to accomplish supply objectives at the lowest total operating costs. This statement is false, because as we know, it takes resources to operate supply, such as salaries, communications expense, supplies, travel costs, computer costs, and accompanying overhead. So the objectives of supply should be achieved as efficiently and economically as possible. So supply managers should be continually alert to improvements possible in purchasing and supply processes and methods, procedures, and techniques. So that's why this statement can be considered false. Statement number 7. In a decentralized purchasing structure, those tasks which are more effectively handled at the corporate level include establishing policies, procedures, controls, and systems. Again, this statement is true. Centralization refers to a supply organization that's physically located in corporate headquarters from which all organizational spending decisions are made. Again, this statement is true. Supply should obtain needed goods and services at the lowest total cost of ownership, which means other cost factors such as quality level, after-sales service, warranties, inventory and spare parts requirements, and downtime must be considered, because in long term, these factors often have a cost impact greater than the original purchase price. Again, this statement is true. And for the last statement, the executive to whom the chief supply officer reports has a strong relationship to the status of purchasing and the degree to which it is emphasized within the organization. Again, this statement is true. So now we have finished answering questions, MCQ and multiple choice and true or false questions on chapter 3. If you have any questions, please contact me, and thank you so much.